Welcome to Washoe Life, the podcast about really interesting people in Washoe County, Northern Nevada, doing interesting things. I'm your co-host, Nancy Lewinhagen. I'm joined, of course.
I'm Bethany Drysdale, and we are joined by one of our own, a colleague at the Northern Nevada Public Health.
We know him well.
We know him very well. We worked together, well, you two more than we have.
Scott Oxerart, who is with Northern Nevada Public Health, Communications Manager.
Yep, I've been with formerly the Washoe County Health District since 2019, and then I had a stint in the Washoe County Manager's Office back in 2015.
We are very glad to have you on Washoe Life for the first time, and we're going to be talking about something today that is really personal to you, and I appreciate that you're on this podcast sharing your story. And it's something that not a lot of people, a condition, a serious health disease that not a lot of people know a lot about.
And we're going to say it one time, so we don't have to say it over and over again. Then we're going to refer to it by its acronym, frontotemporal dementia.
Yes.
FTD.
FTD.
Okay. So this is a form of dementia that honestly I had never heard of. I've heard of other Lewy bodies, Alzheimer's, different types of dementia. This is a new one for me.
Yeah, it's rare. We're trying not to. We think it's rare, at least. Really, it's. I think it's a little bit more profound than it's being reported. But it's one of the dementias that really strikes younger. Most people who are diagnosed are under 60 years old. Wow. When you think of dementia, you're thinking kind of later in life, kind of on the downhill slide. But there's stories of people with FTD that are in their 20s. Wow. That are having children that are in the primes of their careers, and they're facing some pretty serious challenges once they get it.
So, Scott, your dad had FTD.
That's correct. My father, he got it a little after he was 60. He was about 67 when he got diagnosed, but around 65, he started showing some pretty interesting signs that we weren't really sure about. And then ultimately, he passed away in August of 2023 from it.
So he had it. Okay, do the math for me.
So
how long
we think we had it. We think he had it probably in 2019.
Oh,
he didn't get diagnosed till 2022, and then he passed away in 2023.
Okay. So I want to hear. Well, I want to pick up on one thing you said before we start talking about what were the early things that you noticed? You said a couple things happened.
I think first, my dad was a great guy. Like he was a Northern Nevadan transplant. So he came here when I was born, so 41 years ago.
Scott, you're pretty young.
Yeah.
My hair doesn't show it as much. But anyway, he basically raised the family in Carson City in 1983. But he was from Southern California. But he, son of Basque immigrants, proud Basco. Loved Basque food. He loved the community aspect of it. He enjoyed so many different things with Nevada Wolfpack football and sports. He was a planner. Like he worked at IGT for 25 years. He planned out camping trips, everything. And then right around 2020, we started noticing he made some interesting decisions. When he bought his truck in 2001, he spent like 6 months researching it. He went all the way to Dave Kellogg in
I know,
Kellogg,
that's where we bought
Idaho.
our car.
Yeah. So he made a whole trip out of it. Like he was meticulous in his planning. And then one day he shows up and he's got a brand new car that he just kind of went to the lot and purchased. He traded in his old car, and we were just like, what's going on with that? And then one time we were in Donner for like a family event, and he was cooking salmon. The guy loved a barbecue. And he undercooked it so severely. We're like, hey, Steve, you gotta put this back on the grill. And he's like, no, it's good. And he just kept eating it. And it was like sushi at that point.
Okay.
So just like weird things, like that's uncommon. And we would go out. We went to Virginia City one time, and he was dead set on getting ice cream. And one of the things with FTD is it's impulse control. So you can't control a lot of the decisions you make. And a lot of them are sweets. So like anything sugary, he had like 5 cartons of ice cream in his freezer. But there's also like a kind of a very awkward sexual aspect of it too, where he has some troubles controlling some of the inhibitions there.
Wow. And so you started to notice this. It took several years, and that's one of the things about FTD. It takes a while to diagnose. Is that because it's still so unknown?
The only way to get it diagnosed is through a neurologist as of this time. That's one of the biggest things that the Association for Frontotemporal Degeneration is working on, is that diagnostic check. So if you get a blood screening, we're trying to find a marker, or basically a biomarker, where you would see like, oh, you have a protein in your body that shows that you have FTD. So right now with him, he had to do a cognitive test through a neurologist and a series of CT scans and PET scans to show, because what basically happens is your brain, your frontal and temporal lobes shrink, and there's a protein in depending on which kind of FTD you have, there's different variants. It causes the primary decision making functions of your brain to shrink, and that's what causes some of these behavioral changes. So the way they diagnose it is they basically give the person who's suspected to have it like a worksheet, and it's very simple elementary school questions like name as many animals as you can in like 90 seconds. And my dad named dog, cat, and a horse, and that was it. And then it's like draw a clock, or draw a circle for a clock, and now write the numbers in it. Like those are the kind of tests they're using to diagnose like a pretty major disease. So my dad wrote 1, 2, 3, 4, and then all the way to 24 instead of
Wow.
12. So based on that and just the shrinking of the brain from one CT scan 6 months and one PET scan 6 months later, that's when they diagnosed it. But the average is 3.6 years.
3.6. I'm curious, and I'm sure this is not easy to talk about, Scott, and I appreciate your frankness about such a personal experience. What was it like for your dad at the end?
So the progression, it got rough, and that's one of the reasons I'm here, because I want to talk about it, because I don't want to make it as rough for the caregivers who hopefully don't get that disease, or nobody does. But it started pretty simple, little changes like, oh, okay, that's weird. It got into more like paranoia. It got into just complete like detachment emotionally for certain things, like especially my poor mom. My dad was saying that he was having affairs with these girls, his girlfriends, that weren't actually true. He was seeing things like dead bodies in his room. He actually called 911, and SWAT team came to our house with guns ablazing. Um, there was a lot of different things where delusion and just complete like lost of reality set in, where we knew he was changing. It then eventually gets to a point where they become very kind of empathetic, or they're apathetic is the word. Like they lose like really all connection with humans. My dad loved going to breakfast almost every day when he was retired with friends, and he pretty much stayed quiet to himself. He didn't know how to answer his phone or respond to text, so he lost touch with a lot of friends. But towards the end, it basically becomes a problem with swallowing, and you don't get hungry. So he basically stopped talking, stopped eating, and then it gets to a point where he's on hospice, and you're basically giving him morphine to hopefully just make him feel okay. But then it's a deep sleep. There's a death rattle. If you haven't looked up a death rattle, it's one of the most horrific sounds you ever hear. And then eventually, he passed away on August 7th, 2023 at about 10 o'clock p.m. He was in his room. My mom and I were with him. And it's that moment that kind of just sets in when you see your father there laying in a bed. But that was the process.
And you were very close to him. Um, what is it like to watch somebody become somebody that you don't necessarily know? And this is about awareness, and what encouragement would you give to somebody to stick around through that? That had to be so hard.
It's one of those opportunities where you start grieving before the person dies.
Mm-hmm.
And that, I think, was the biggest challenge for me, is I didn't feel like I had anybody to talk to about it besides like some close friends, but even trying to bring it up to like even coworkers, it's very difficult because they don't know what it is and they don't understand it. And when I initially like was doing Google searches like everybody else, like trying to find support, there really wasn't anything around Northern Nevada, and there still isn't. But I'm working on that, and I'll talk about that later. But there really wasn't that much support. So I mean, I would drive home after seeing him, and I wouldn't really want to go see him because he wasn't pleasant, he wasn't funny, he was more like just quiet and kind of acting so much differently than he used to be that it wasn't that much fun to be around. And I say that like with a heavy heart because he was so much fun to be around. Like he was the guy, he was the life of the party.
Well, and then you also talk about the support for the caregiver, your mother. She had to, did you guys get anyone in to help towards the end?
Yeah, so we put him on hospice, or they put him on hospice. I think it was about 6 months before he ended up passing. So once that is established, the support then comes in where they can help kind of bathe him. And unfortunately, incontinence is a primary symptom of FTD. So he was in diapers, but before he started getting in diapers, there was a lot of cleanup that was primarily done by my mom, and I would help. And there's nothing like having to wipe your dad's butt. Sorry, this
Yeah.
is PG or not. But yeah, we did eventually get some support. We didn't want to put him in a home because he asked, like that was one of his things where he didn't want to be in a home, but we were this close and didn't do it. But yeah, there was some support there down the stretch.
So that makes me think of something. Was he aware were there lucid points where he was aware of what was going on, where he could have conversations with him like, "Hey dad, this is what's happening and, we need to plan for, future," any of that?
I think so. I think deep down he knew something was going on. Like he backed up his boat into like the side of the garage and like kind of crumbled some of the part of the house. And I could tell like he knew something was up. But whenever we would ask him like, "Hey, what do you think about like the diagnosis and how you feeling and all that stuff?" It's almost like he didn't want to put any burden on us. And he would just say, "Oh, no, I'm good. It is what it is." That was like his thing. He always said that, which kind of made me mad at the time, but now it's fine. But like, it is what it is. Like, we're fine. It's all good. Like he had gout really bad in his knees and it was really hard for him to get up. And he was on the toilet one night past bedtime. My mom was asleep. And because of the gout, he couldn't actually get off the toilet and was there for like 8 hours.
Mm.
And my mom was like, "You got to help me come pick him up. Like, I can't get him off the toilet." But like, even after that, we were like, "Dad, can you get up?" He's like, "Yeah, yeah, I'm about to." And he's been on the toilet for 8 hours. Like,
Wow.
"No, Dad, come on, you get up. Do you need help?" "No, no, no, I'm good. I'm good. Thank you." Like he would actually say that before like we finally got him up, and then he'd be like, "Oh yeah, sorry, it is what it is." And that was the reality he was in. Like he really thought he could, but he clearly could not.
And this there's been, let's talk a little bit about FTD and some of the famous people who have this, and because it is very different from Alzheimer's and dementia and all of that.
Yeah, I think one of the most prominent names to has been diagnosed with FTD is Bruce Willis. And I think everybody knows who Bruce Willis is. It's funny, the association has a call center, kind of like 311. And then once Bruce Willis got diagnosed, they had to like double their staff of their call center, and they had to bring in multiple languages because people were calling from all over the world being like, "Wait a minute, I know Bruce Willis. I think my loved one has what he has," kind of thing. His wife, Emma Hemming Willis, is a saint. She's like a strong advocate for FTD. She was at the conference that we were at about a month ago. She is writing a book about Bruce's journey. That's a very private matter that she's keeping that under wraps. And I think I know why, because I've seen kind of what the disease does to a loved one. And I'm glad she's doing that because he has such a rich history. And
We all think we know him.
exactly.
Right.
Wendy Williams is also another one. She has FTD and then what's called primary progressive aphasia, which causes it's in the family of FTD, but it has some different symptoms. That's been a really heartbreaking story to see. I don't know if you guys have been following that.
Yeah, and let's just say some of the headlines because when she got put into that home, right? She was telling people that her family was putting her away.
Yeah. Well, and then she had a public guardian because she has a lot of assets under her name, and there was some concerns that she might not be able to responsibly carry those. So I don't know all the details there, but there was a documentary about her. You can kind of see some of the behavioral changes. So it's really, again, every case is different, but they're all in the same family, and they still show some of the debilitating symptoms personality wise that are really hard to grasp when you know somebody, you've known them your whole life, and then they change so suddenly without any reason until you get that diagnosis, which takes a very long time to get.
And with Wendy Williams, I don't know, I would see her name in, like, tabloids and, what was going on, and I thought, "Wow, she's weird. She must be on drugs, like, clearly she needs somebody to step in and help her 'cause she's just weird." And, let's just take a moment and have some compassion for not knowing what people are going through. Because I know when I saw those headlines, I'm like, wow, like she's weird. And that the
It's
stigma that goes,
heartbreaking.
it is, it's so heartbreaking. And I think that, we need more compassion for those around us. We don't know what's going on in their lives. And then taking away that stigma too. I mean, when you mentioned that a little bit earlier, when you see somebody doing something a little out of character and you think, like, what's that all about? There's something going on.
The stigma is real,
Yeah.
and you don't really understand it until you kind of step back. But my dad did some things in public, very embarrassing things that I know people saw and were like, what is wrong with this guy? Like, seriously, cuckoo. Like, he, luckily, we had a tracker on his car. I say that. But one time we were supposed to meet up at BJ's and Sparks for dinner. He's 30 minutes late. I'm like, he's not answering his phone. I checked the app to see where his car is, and it's at like a 7-Eleven in South Reno. I'm like, okay, what's going on here? My mom doesn't know. My mom actually finds out that his phone is at home, so he didn't have his phone. So I go to the 7-Eleven, and he's been there again for 45 minutes. His car is in the stall getting gas. There's a big old pile of pee right next to it. I've later found out. He's perusing the aisles back and forth. He's looking for sweets, but he doesn't have his wallet. He doesn't have his phone, and his car's just about out of gas. So he knew he had to get gas, but once he got out to fill it up, he had no way to pay for it. He could not figure that situation out. I walk into the convenience store, and the guy behind the counter is like, "All right, buddy, come on, let's go. You got to get out of here, or else I'm gonna call the cops." Like,
Wow.
he doesn't know.
How did you know he was there? Because he left his phone.
Well, his car had the little tracker on
Okay.
it.
Oh,
So
thank goodness.
thankfully, yeah,
Okay.
we knew
Yeah.
where his car was. I mean, he loved to play golf, and eventually there was only like one friend that kept taking him, Mark Farley, but like there was some reasons for which people didn't want to golf with him, and one of them, and again, I'm getting into details, and I'm not trying to like glorify this. This is just like what happens, and I'm trying to be honest to myself and him. But I also want people to know so incontinence is a big deal. Like it becomes an issue in FTD. He went out to play golf with a friend, and they had McDonald's beforehand. And he literally gets out of the car, goes in the front, in the parking lot, and goes number 2. And the guy that's with him was telling me about it later on after he passed. And he's like, "Yeah, I get out and I can't find Steve." And then I see the guy who parked next to us just being like, "Oh my gosh," like, and he does that. Like that's just reality. Like that
Well,
happened.
it's a disease and it's eating at his brain.
And but the guy just judging him
Mhm.
doesn't know that. He doesn't know that. There's no broken arm or broken leg or handicap.
I
Like
understand.
I mean, you can give him a card afterwards that says like, "Hey, he has frontotemporal degeneration, like his behavior is messed up." But like there was countless moments like that where the stigma and his reputation was being tarnished and hurt because of decisions that he was making because he had a brain that was shrinking.
This is what I really, really admire about you, Scott. I've known you for so long that you're digging in and you're becoming part of the solution. I have family members that had Alzheimer's and have it, And I was associated with that through my career as a journalist. And that association very much helped us with my grandmother and it helped the caregivers and it helped their, my family members. That's what you're doing now. And I really admire that about you, Scott.
Yeah, I wish I would have known a little bit more about the resources out there and associations out there. Alzheimer's Association is a great organization. And the Northern Nevada chapter, run by Nikki Rubarth, is fantastic. So let me get the plug for them. But I really didn't have any support, and I didn't know about some of the resources with the Association for Frontotemporal Degeneration, AFTD. So you got FTD to disease. AFTD is the association nonprofit that's dedicated to helping people with it and the caregivers. So yeah, after he passed, I knew I had to do something. I didn't know anything. I find myself a pretty good peruser of the internet, and I could not find a lot on FTD. So I want to change that. So I became a volunteer, and then eventually they asked me to become an ambassador for the state of Nevada because they didn't have one in Northern Nevada based in here. But my primary goal is to really help raise awareness of it so people know what it is and they can see it out in the community or within their family. But also for the caregivers that do have a diagnosis, that they have somewhere to go to where they can bring the person who's impacted by it, but also the family. Because one of the things is when you're deep in the thick of that battle where your loved one is doing things that you really don't like seeing, being able to talk about that with somebody that has gone through it is a game changer. And we don't really have that. We don't have a support group in Reno or Sparks or Washoe County. I've done some meet and greets, and I did one, and it was actually at the library in Sierra View, and 2 people came. And I'm like, there's got to be more people than that. Like, there's got to be more. So I had another one. We did it at the Sparks Marina. We did a quick walk. It was a couple months later. I had like 18 people show up to that. Not all, it was really pretty much 4 families, but we had more. We're gaining some support. So I'm trying to get more meet and greets out there just to establish a network, because what's happening is the people, 2 different families that both going through the same disease, now they're connecting. They don't need me. Like they set up their own kind of walks or, able to talk through certain things and share some of those details that you really can't share with people that don't really know what's going on with it.
So we only have a couple minutes left, and I want to give you the opportunity to give your dad maybe his reputation back to our listeners. What do you tell your kids about Grandpa? What do you want listeners to remember about your dad?
I think everybody has somebody in their life where there's a certain time of year or an event or something that brings out the best in them. And with my dad, it was Cinco de Mayo. So his birthday is on Cinco de Mayo. So naturally, even though he's Basco, he loves Mexican food. He get the same combo meal every time, chile relleno and a little burrito. And yeah. Anywho, like that was his time though. And in Carson City, there's a restaurant called El Charro Avitia.
My favorite.
It's a good one. But he had a party there basically for like 30 straight years, like to the point where they just like, if he didn't call to reserve a spot, like they just kind of penciled him in. He'd go there at least once every 2 weeks, just to have fun with friends and drink margaritas and all that. So like that kind of Steve, we have pictures of him, where he's got a margarita in his hand. You could tell he's had a couple probably at that point, but just big old smile. And he would just go from like seat to seat, like, oh, hey, how you doing? Like, oh yeah, how's the family? Like he would go to every single person and make sure that they were good. And then the other thing is Wolfpack football tailgates. Like those were his element. Like he barbecued, he had chairs, he had drinks for everybody, like shade structures. We brought a TV one year because there was other games. Like he was always thinking about how he could serve other people at those games, especially his family. He always made it so much fun for all of us. So those are the memories that I cherish. And those are the memories that really just keep me kind of motivated to keep helping spread awareness of this terrible disease.
Wow. When I met you, that's how I knew about your dad, was through Wolfpack. We'd come in on Mondays and we'd talk about the game and you'd tell me you were there with your dad, and I could just see it in your face. I see your dad. I didn't even know him. I see him right here. That's awesome.
Thank you for sharing with us. And And you're right. When we started out with this, what is this disease? I don't know anything about it. Bringing awareness, why? So then we know what it is, but really being able to recognize and provide support to others who might be, you know, dealing as a caregiver or with family member, it's just so important. So thank you for doing that for
Yeah.
us.
So as you start this support, where is it that you're directing people? If they have someone, or what should they do if they start to see symptoms and they're in Northern Nevada? What's your goal?
Well, if you're watching this, you can reach out to me directly. I'm happy to help with anything. TheAFTD.org is the website for the association. They have a call line that is staffed 24/7. You can call that, get some information, resources in your area. Just by doing a couple events, there's actually people who work at the county in air quality management, Janine Rosa, who has said, "Hey, yeah, I had a family member with FTD." So it's just these little short stories you can share with somebody that really helps kind of spread that and connect with people. But I'm always available. I'll talk about my dad all day. I'll listen to people's stories. Um, I want to be there for people because it is so hard as a caregiver, as a son, as a parent, as an aunt, uncle, whatever they are to you. It matters, and being able to process everything and talk about it is super important.
If anybody can do it, it's Scott Oxerart. I appreciate that. Thank you for being our
All right.
guest.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you both.
All right. Well, until next time. And if you have an idea or feedback, if you want to get in touch with this guy, just email washoe311@washoecounty.gov and we will make that connection. So thank you so much for joining us.